Open this gate right now." Claudia's voice cut through the morning air like a car alarm nobody could shut off. Her pearls bounced against her chest with every stomp, catching the sunlight like they were part of some royal battle armor. That's how it began. Our quiet lakeside Saturday shattered by the unmistakable sound of Claudia on a mission. The chain-link fence gleamed like it had just been baptized in chrome, a brand-new padlock dangling with smug authority. The sign was worse. Bold black letters against white metal, screaming, "Private access. Your members only." It wasn't just a rule. It was a warning. Claudia stood there, clipboard raised like she was swearing in a witness at trial. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains. I swear, I even saw a curtain tremble when she turned her head. And me? I just leaned on my porch rail, coffee in hand, watching the show unfold like it was free Saturday morning theater. Of course, this wasn't random. Claudia had been laying the groundwork for weeks. It started with one of those HOA letters that show up in your mailbox smelling faintly of printer toner and superiority. Dear residents, in order to preserve the safety and property values of our community, the board has voted to restrict lake access to HOA members in good standing. Effective immediately, non-compliant residents will be considered trespassers. The phrase "good standing" was Claudia's favorite weapon. If your grass grew half an inch too tall, she could declare you out of good standing. Miss a meeting? Out. Question her decisions? Definitely out. And with the fence up, she had a shiny new way to punish anyone who didn't kneel at the altar of her clipboard. I remember the meeting where she pushed it through. Folding chairs in the community rec hall, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the faint smell of burned coffee drifting from a stale percolator in the corner. Claudia tapped her pearl necklace like a metronome every time someone objected. "Property values are declining," she declared, though no one had seen a single listing drop. "We must protect the lakefront. Unregulated access is a liability." One neighbor, Gary, cleared his throat and asked, "By unregulated, do you mean children fishing off the dock or just the fact that you saw the Miller boys barbecuing last weekend?" Claudia didn't even blink. "Both. We can't have freeloaders using amenities they don't pay for." It was hard not to laugh. Those freeloaders were literally homeowners who'd been here longer than Claudia herself. But her allies on the board nodded dutifully, pens scribbling like her word was gospel. The motion passed, 3 votes to 2. So here we were, the fence shining like some suburban Berlin Wall. Claudia strutted up to it that morning with all the pageantry of a queen conducting an inspection. She rattled the lock for effect, then turned to a couple walking their dog. "This will keep things orderly," she told them. "You wouldn't believe the kind of people who've been sneaking in here. Outsiders, renters." The couple nodded politely, but the husband's eyes flicked toward me, and I knew we were thinking the same thing. This wasn't about outsiders. This was about Claudia tightening her grip. I set my coffee down and strolled closer, just to hear more of the performance. "You're trespassing if you don't have an access card," she announced to no one in particular, her voice carrying like she was narrating a crime drama. "We'll be issuing them at the next board meeting, but only to residents in compliance." "And who decides compliance?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. Claudia spun toward me, pearls catching the light. "The board, of course. It's all in the bylaws." Funny thing about those bylaws. They'd been amended so many times under her watch that they were practically a choose-your-own-adventure book. What used to be a straightforward set of community rules was now a labyrinth where Claudia always had the map. Neighbors were gathering now, forming a loose half-circle at the gate. Some were whispering, others shaking their heads. One kid on a bike called out, "So, I can't go swimming anymore." His mom hushed him quickly, but the look on her face was all frustration. Claudia, sensing the tension, doubled down. "If you want privileges, you need to follow the rules. This is about responsibility, about preserving what we have. But here's what nobody else knew. Not yet, anyway. Claudia hadn't actually secured the land the gate stood on. The HOA didn't own it outright. They were leasing a tiny strip, A bureaucratic oversight so old and buried no one had bothered to check, until I did. I kept that detail tucked in my back pocket as Claudia carried on, her pearls rattling like applause for her own performance. I could feel the neighborhood shifting around me. People weren't exactly cheering, but they weren't pushing back either. Not yet. The air was heavy with that strange mix of lake water and hot asphalt, the kind of smell that told you summer was digging in for the long haul. Claudia's voice droned on, but in my head, gears were already turning. This wasn't just a fence. This was the opening move in a game Claudia thought she controlled. And as she tightened her grip on that clipboard, barking orders about IDs and compliance, I realized something. If she wanted a gate, I was going to give her one. But it wouldn't end the way she expected, because sometimes the best way to deal with a locked door is to own the keys yourself. The letter slid out of the envelope like a snake uncoiling, creased, smug, and stamped with the HOA's logo. Across the top, in bold, Lake Access Fee Notice. At the bottom, in Claudia's unmistakable looping signature, the threat. Failure to remit payment will result in immediate suspension of lake privileges. You could almost hear the pearls rattling as she wrote it. I sat at my kitchen table, the paper trembling in the air conditioning draft, and let the words sink in. Pay up or lose the lake. Never mind that the lake wasn't hers to sell, fence, or ransom. Claudia had turned community living into a subscription service. The neighborhood was buzzing, the way it does when one person's drama seeps through everyone else's drywall. Kids asked why they couldn't fish anymore. Dads muttered into their beers about overreach, and moms tried to calculate whether skipping dues was worth Claudia's wrath. And of course, Claudia was strutting. At the next board meeting, she walked in like she owned not just the lake but the air we were breathing. Pearls in place, heels clicking sharp against the linoleum floor, clipboard raised like a preacher's Bible. Effective immediately, she declared. Lake access requires proof of good standing and a paid access fee. This is a privilege, not a right. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "Pretty sure it is a right." Another hissed, "She can't do that." But Claudia just smiled, basking in the power trip. I didn't speak. Not yet. Instead, I listened, watched, studied. Because while Claudia was busy tightening her grip on the neighborhood, I had started following a paper trail of my own. It began the night after the fence went up. I couldn't sleep, so I sat at my desk with a lamp burning and pulled up the county property records website. It's not glamorous detective work, mostly PDFs that look like they were scanned by someone half asleep. Still, buried between warranty deeds and plat maps, I noticed something odd. The HOA didn't actually own the strip of land where the gate now stood. They owned the park, the picnic tables, the landscaping. But the sliver of land that touched the county road and led directly to the lake? That tiny rectangle on the map, barely wide enough for a fence and a gate, was listed under a different owner. And that owner? A local couple who had bought it decades ago, before moving away and leaving it essentially forgotten. Taxes had been paid automatically through escrow, year after year, but no one had touched the parcel itself. It was the kind of oversight only someone like Claudia could miss, because she was too busy staging power plays at board meetings to read the fine print. The next day, I printed the map, highlighted the little sliver in neon yellow, and tucked it into a folder. Each click of the stapler felt like sealing a secret. Meanwhile, the HOA kept pressing. New letters went out, this time with more bite. Non-compliance will be considered trespassing. Legal action may be pursued. Neighbors grumbled, but most reluctantly paid the fee, sliding envelopes across the table like they were handing tribute to a queen. Gary cornered me at the mailbox one evening, his voice low. "You gonna pay it?" "Not yet," I said. He chuckled bitterly. "You're brave. Claudia's already telling people you're a troublemaker." Good, I thought. Letter. The truth was, I wasn't just refusing to pay. I was building leverage. Every document I pulled, plat maps, deed records, easement agreements, tightened the net around Claudia's illusion of power. She had her fence, her lock, her little access cards. But the legal right to the gate itself? That was up for grabs. One night I spread everything across my dining table. Maps, deeds, even old meeting minutes from when the HOA first formed. The overhead light cast sharp shadows, turning the papers into a battlefield. Somewhere between the lines of bureaucratic jargon, I realized I had found the crack in Claudia's fortress wall. It wasn't about shouting at meetings or arguing over bylaws. It was about ownership, about the deed, about the land beneath the lock. And I knew exactly what my next move had to be. The following board meeting was even more theatrical than usual. Claudia wore a new blazer, her pearls gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. She opened with a smug report. Over 70% compliance with the new lake access fees. This proves the community supports our initiative. A few neighbors clapped. Most didn't. I sat in the back, folder resting against my knee, listening to her voice echo through the room. She was on top of the world, convinced she had us cornered. She talked about exclusive rights, about preserving value, about discipline. But while she preached, I pictured that highlighted sliver of land. The strip she didn't own, the gate she couldn't legally control. And as her pearls rattled with every self-congratulatory nod, I smiled to myself. Because soon, very soon, she was going to learn the difference between running a meeting and holding a deed. "Open this gate. I demand it be opened immediately." Claudia's voice ricocheted down the street, sharp and shrill, a sound designed to make people flinch. But when her eyes landed on the new sign, bold, metal, unblinking, she went silent. Private property, no trespassing. For a moment, it felt like the entire neighborhood held its breath. The gate she'd used as a weapon, the lock she'd rattled like a scepter, was now closed to her. I didn't need to announce it. The sign said everything. Neighbors peered from porches and windows, coffee mugs hovering midair. Someone whispered, "Is she serious?" Another chuckled under their breath. The summer air was heavy with lake humidity, buzzing cicadas filling the silence Claudia had left behind. And me? I leaned casually against the fence, key in pocket, savoring the shift in power as Claudia's pearls quivered at her throat. To get here, I'd played the long game. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, it was paperwork, the kind of paperwork Claudia thought she'd mastered but never bothered to check. After weeks of digging, of piecing together plat maps and dusty deeds, I'd done what she hadn't. I called the owners of that forgotten strip of land. They were older now, living 3 states away. When I explained what was happening, that the HOA had built a fence and was charging fees on property they didn't even own, they laughed. "Figures," the husband said. "We've been meaning to sell that little slice for years. Didn't think anyone cared about it." I cared. So I filed the paperwork, signed the deed, and within 2 weeks the land, and the gate planted squarely on top of it, belonged to me. My name on the county records, stamped and sealed. Claudia's great fortress had been built on sand, and now she was finding out the tide had rolled in. The official reveal came quietly at first, a notice posted by me, laminated and zip-tied to the chain link. Private property, access by owner's permission only. Claudia must have strutted down for her morning walk, ready to show off her latest power grab, when she met the sign instead. Her face went red. She shook the lock like it might magically obey her authority. Then she spotted me. "What is the meaning of this?" she snapped. I smiled. "Means exactly what it says. You can't just put up a sign. This is HOA property." I reached into my folder, because with Claudia you always needed paperwork, and held up the deed. "Not anymore. This strip belongs to me. The gate sits on it, which means the gate belongs to me too." For once, Claudia didn't have a clipboard ready. She blinked, pearls trembling as though they might crack under the pressure. Behind her, neighbors had gathered, drawn by the commotion. Gary crossed his arms and smirked. A mom with her toddler leaned in for a better view. Even the Miller boys, the supposed freeloaders, wheeled their bikes closer. The audience was growing, and Claudia knew it. "This is outrageous," she said, her voice faltering. "You can't lock out the community. You're violating bylaws." "Funny," I said. "That's what you told everyone else when you put this fence up. Bylaws don't mean much if you don't own the land." Her jaw worked, searching for words. The board members arrived minutes later, flustered and red-faced. They huddled around Claudia, whispering, flipping through binders, trying to find some clause, some loophole, some magical rule that could undo what I'd done. But property law is blunt. Ownership trumps bylaws every time. Finally, one of them, a nervous man named Dennis, looked up and asked, "So, are you saying the HOA doesn't control the gate anymore?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," I replied. "And since I own the land, I own the right to decide who goes through." The murmur that followed was electric. Neighbors weren't cheering out loud, but their smiles, their nods, their suppressed laughter spoke volumes. It wasn't just me versus Claudia anymore. Everyone saw her authority unravel in real time. Claudia tried one last stand. "You'll regret this. The board will pursue legal action." I tucked the key deeper into my pocket. "Then I'll see you in court. But until then, trespassing laws apply here, which means if you want to open this gate—" I let the silence hang. "You'll need my permission." The cicadas buzzed louder, as if punctuating the line. Claudia's mouth opened, then closed again. For once, she had no comeback. The crowd slowly dispersed, some shaking their heads, others exchanging knowing glances. Kids on bikes darted off down the street, already retelling the scene like playground legend. Claudia lingered, frozen at the sign, fingers grazing the chain link as though willing it to bend. Her pearls looked heavier than usual, dragging her down. I walked back toward my porch, the summer air thick but sweet. My house smelled faintly of fresh coffee waiting inside. I knew this wasn't over, not with Claudia. She wouldn't surrender quietly. There'd be letters, threats, maybe even lawyers. But for now, the gate was mine. The lock was mine, and Claudia's kingdom had crumbled beneath her heels. What I didn't know yet, what none of us knew, was how far she'd go to take it back.